Okay, so this is our third notes on the cell energy module, and today we're going to talk about our last item, which is cellular respiration. And we've been talking about photosynthesis and the stages of photosynthesis, and today we're going to kind of look at the other end of that idea. When in photosynthesis, glucose was produced, which then can be broken down by animals to make energy. A process where that glucose is then broken down and made into energy is cellular respiration. So that's why this says here, making energy. The organisms that complete photosynthesis are both plants and animals, and they just use the glucose that's produced by plants. They do that by either eating the plant directly, they're a herbivore, or they then eat organisms, other organisms that eat plants in some indirect way. The organelle that is responsible for this process is mitochondria, the cell with the energy producing organ within the cell. And continue here. The equation for cellular respiration, if you look at it as 6O2 plus 6C6O2O6 yields 6CO2 plus 6H2O, and we get energy from that. If you look at this is the opposite of photosynthesis. And which kind of makes sense. Photosynthesis, the whole idea is to take water and CO2 and then make glucose. And the result, oxygen is also produced, but here animals and most other living things besides plants then use that glucose and undo everything that the plants did. But that's cool because everything that they produce at the end of cellular respiration is then used by the plants again to complete photosynthesis, as long as there's sunlight. To continue here, really, cellular respiration is in 3 steps. The first step is glycolysis, and it makes, this is the product, pyruvic acid, and in the end it makes 2 ATP, which is the unit of energy in the cell, and 2 NADH, which is then used in other processes of cellular respiration. It's important to remember that this occurs in the cytoplasm. It's not even in the mitochondria yet. It's kind of preparing kind of like when you turn in an assignment to some teachers, you have to put your name on and do certain things before it's even eligible to be turned in. That's kind of what glycolysis does. It takes the glucose and then makes it into something that then can enter the mitochondria and be useful. The result, those 2 ATP. There's a process though called fermentation, and this is something that occurs without O2 or oxygen. So if glycolysis is complete and then there's not any oxygen to go any further, because oxygen is needed right here if you look at the equation, oxygen is needed for cellular respiration in the mitochondria. So if there isn't any, then that product of pyruvic acid is then used in something called fermentation. There's 2 types of fermentation. One's lactic acid, and the other one is alcohol fermentation. And lactic acid fermentation is something that goes in our bodies. And when your muscles don't have any oxygen, when you're working out too hard, there's not enough supply of oxygen. You're breathing as hard as you can, but you're not getting enough oxygen to the muscles. Then lactic acid then is produced instead of the other products that are needed to make energy. So, and also we have alcohol fermentation, which is completed to make like alcohol, beer, and wine, and all those kind of things that sometimes people drink. So that's the initial step, glycolysis. The next one is the Krebs cycle, and this takes place in the mitochondria. We'll draw a picture of the mitochondria on the next page, so you can wait for that. But this is where, once the products pyruvic acid are made by glycolysis and there's oxygen, then the next part, the Krebs cycle, can then take place. So we'll erase this. In this process, NADH and FADH2 is produced. So if I was going to draw the mitochondria, kind of similar to chloroplast in some ways. It doesn't have the gran on it or stacks. Okay, this is like a crude drawing of mitochondria. But then pyruvic acid is then made, and then it's broken down into something else, and then enters this Krebs cycle. This is sometimes also called the citric acid cycle. And the main point of this, though, this is in this open space here. And actually I'll change the color. So, but I'll make it yellow here. So on this open space here, this is where this process is occurring from the products that are made during glycolysis, and it then is producing, just like photosynthesis, the Krebs cycle is then producing NADH and FADH, which is then used in the last part of cellular respiration. So then if we look at that, the last part, the third part of cellular respiration is the electron transport chain. This is just like photosynthesis, where we move electrons, and as we do that, we create this big difference in hydronium ions on one side of the membrane compared to the other, and then they're released real quickly, and it produces a lot of ATP. This is also called oxidative phosphorylation. It uses ATP synthases, which are just proteins embedded in the membranes of this mitochondria, and then gets this, again, this high concentration of hydrogen on one side, low on the other, and then causes them to move quickly, and it produces ATP. Pretty complex process, but really important to remember about oxidative phosphorylation is it produces a lot of ATP. Think back of glycolysis, 2 ATP, that's not much. Okay? But this process here, 36 ATP is produced. So this is really the ultimate goal of the cell, is to complete this last oxidative phosphorylation or electron transport chain, so then it can make an abundant amount or a lot of ATP. So just keep this in mind. Remember that the whole point of this is to make that large amount of ATP. It consists of 3 stages: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle, and electron transport chain or oxidative phosphorylation. And also keep in mind it's just a reverse photosynthesis. So they're really related to each other. If you look at the products of cellular respiration, they're then used as reactants in photosynthesis. And then the products of photosynthesis are then used as reactants in cellular respiration. It's just this big cycle. We're just going to draw a little diagram of it. It would look like this. This is called photo, cellular, and just photosynthesis. Just a continuous process, cycle that occurs over and over again. So that's your notes on cellular respiration. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope we did everything done. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you later.